We who have served in the military take an oath to uphold the Constitution, as well as we who have served in the Congress and other offices. And we take the oath. It says that we swear to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Right. And right now, that is where our greatest threat is. Nobody's going to attack us. We have more weapons than all the other countries put together. We can't lose a military battle, but we can lose some other kind of battles, winning the hearts and minds of people. And that's the job that we have to fight, and we have to win. But there is a plan generally for those who love big government that they have to plant fear in the hearts and minds of the individuals, because under fear, individuals are more willing to give up their liberties. But I have come to the firm conclusion after studying this very thoroughly that there is never a need to give up any liberty for a sense of security. We do not need to. And just think of what has happened since 9/11. Our freedoms have been severely undermined. Not only are we harassed at the airports, but just think of what our government can do to us now with warrantless searches, with being declared an enemy combatant, the potential of being hauled off to prison without the right of habeas corpus, with our CIA being involved in secret renditions and torture. This grand debate in Washington, about whether waterboarding is torture. Those individuals who don't think it's torture, why don't they volunteer and go through it a few times? Our Constitution was designed for one purpose, and it was never written for the purpose of restraining our freedoms and the individual. It was written to restrain our government. And now we have so many things turned on its head. We're supposed to have a Fourth Amendment that would protect our privacy. But what has happened today? The secrecy of government seems to be more sacrosanct in Washington than your privacy. And that means we don't look at this in the proper manner. What about property? They're supposed to protect our property right. We're not supposed to have this wholesale use of eminent domain to take our properties from us and use for government purposes. We have a very strong provision in the Constitution. It was put there by the founders because they knew and understood something about money. They understood something about inflation. They knew about the runaway inflation of the continental dollar. And therefore, they said there would be no emitting of bills of credit, which is nothing other than paper money. And they also said that only gold and silver can be legal tender. Now what happens? And many of you know and are aware of the fact that if you try to use gold and silver legal tender, you may be robbed by the government and taken the silver and gold from you. So we're supposed to protect these rights, not to undermine them. We're supposed to protect contracts. But what contract can you enter into without umpteen regulations from the federal government? And doing all these things, we have to get permission from our government, the use of our land. We don't really own our land anymore. All we do is we pay rent on the land, and then if we want to use our land, we have to ask all levels of government permission to use the land. So we have drifted a long way and lost our confidence in ourselves. We've lost our confidence in our Constitution. We've lost our confidence that freedom really works. But freedom does work. And the magnificent thing about freedom is not only does it work, freedom is popular. The magnificent thing about freedom is it brings people together. And we do have diversity, but that is great. That is what it is all about. Because if you have a free society, you don't have a government telling us how we're supposed to run our lives. So if people want to run their lives a certain way or practice a certain religion, if you don't affect hurting other people, that's fine and dandy. If you mess up, it's your fault, and you have to suffer the consequences. That's the only thing you have to accept. But no, this brings people together because we come together not because we want to agree on religion or agree on our social conditions or whatever we want to do and how we want to lead our lives, but we agree that we want our freedom, that we can make our choices on our own. And we might not agree on how we want to spend our own money. Some people like to do things with their money that I wouldn't dare do with their money. And I can use my money as I choose, and this is the way it should be. And yet, when the government takes the money, we lose our choices. But the important thing that we can agree with about our money is that we ought to get to make the decisions. We ought to be able to keep the fruits of our labor. And if that is the case, we don't need a federal income tax to do that. Of course, you know, 1913 was like an unlucky year for us. You know, we had that income tax and then of that other operation that came into effect in 1913 that has been systematically undermining the value of our dollar since that institution came into existence. We've lost about 97% of the value of the dollar, and if we better check today, it may not have lost another 1% or so. But the value of the dollar is very key and something I've talked about for a long time. But if we did the thing in Washington, what we're supposed to, and that is protect the value of the dollar, we wouldn't be putting up with this system of money. But this also means that we should change it. And if we had a proper size government, if we had a free market economy, if we had a constitution we respected, we would not have a Federal Reserve System. One of the great problems we're facing today is the fact that the middle class America is shrinking and is under great threat because of what we have done over the past 50, 60, 70 years of undermining the value of the dollar and, of course, taking away the responsibility from the individual and creating a nanny state, and we're starting to see the consequence. The consequence of our economic policy and our monetary policy and our foreign policy has been that so many of our good jobs have gone overseas, and it's hard for us to compete. And therefore, now as the government gets smaller and we have nothing but debt, middle class is starting to hurt. But that is a reflection of the monetary system because wealth gets transferred from the middle class to the very wealthy. In spite of Wall Street having their ups and downs, last year, at the end of the year, they had enough money to give out $38 billion worth of bonuses at the end of the year. Now, that to me is not a reflection of capitalism. If you have a large company and you provide goods and services for us, the consumer, and we make a company rich because of that, that is a lot different than if you make a lot of money because you belong to the military industrial complex or the medical industrial complex.